determining readiness for specifically a son's impartation, when I'm going to communicate with him, when I'm going to give him the talk, the man talk. This terror, this fright, this fatherly fright occurred for me. The very first moment I found out that I was having a boy. And I still remember the moment we went in for an ultrasound. We were cheating and finding out what the gender of the baby was. And I was convinced it was a girl. And I was very excited to have that girl. Because for me, the pressure was sort of on Leslie for the girl, where the pressure was on me for the boy. So I was prophesying this was going to be a girl. And I find out that it's a boy. And I tell you what, there was a very real terror, for probably not the best word for it, but I have such a high vision of what a man can be and should be. And so for me, this began, that very question of, okay, now how do I train my son? And this dimension of the talk is one key dimension that every one of us as men knows about but rarely talks about. We all just instinctively understand that there's a baton and very few of us are receiving it. Most fathers don't know to hand off this understanding of manhood because they weren't handed anything. So there's no modeling taking place. And some of us, like me, I received something, but it was a very funny version of a transfer. And so as a result, we're like, I don't want to do that to my son. And so I'd say in the most basic level of how do you know? Well, first of all, you have to be looking for it. You have to be ready for it. And that's something that most of us as fathers, I would say, we're not exactly sure if we really want to even have our eyes wide open to seeing the development of our boys and to be ready to impart something, because it means we have to do something. And moms seem very ready to tell the dads that they need to do something. But for us as fathers, it's a very real challenge. And, we can, be very sharp and intelligent beings, but then you get on this topic of speaking to our own boys about their sexuality. And I tell you what, our tongue gets like a felt eraser in our mouth. Even when I sat down with Hudson quite a few years ago, very first time, I've talked on sexuality all over the world for decades. I've written over 12 books just on that topic, and it was hard. So how much more so the father who's never spoken on these topics? At the same time, there is a transition in a child's life, and I usually call it the cocoon of innocence that a parent needs to protect when a child actually has to be preserved from certain knowledge, because it's like handing the keys to my riding lawnmower to my 5-year-old. And, just sort of hoping for the best, because it's not that a riding lawnmower is evil. It's just that it's inappropriate and unhealthy for a 5-year-old, because it's a power tool that can actually chop limbs off. And so as a result, it's important that I do not hand this knowledge or this power too quickly. And so this cocoon of innocence is a protection of innocence, but innocence isn't purity. And a child at a certain age is ready to transition from innocence to purity. And when a parent begins to notate that, and purity is an action of the will. Innocence is a lack of understanding of something. They were never exposed to something, whereas purity is the readiness to be exposed but to stand apart from it. That's why I use the term cocoon. You have a caterpillar who's in the dirt, and then he goes into this chrysalis. And in that chrysalis, this cocoon, he is forming these wings so that he can exit that chrysalis and actually be able to enter the world, which he was previously in, but no longer in the dirt, but actually still be in the world. So being in the world, but not of it. And that's purity. Purity is a moral decision of the will to know about evil, but to not participate in it. And a child at a certain point in time is ready for this handoff. It's sort of like they're ready to handle the riding lawnmower in a way that is actually beautifying to the estate as opposed to destructive, to go over the bushes and hack them up. And so as a result, there's a watchfulness in a parent to say, it's time. And of course, the next question would be, so what do you say? What does the man talk contain? But that's for a different time. I have that whole honorable manhood training just to go into that. What do you say? But to know when, that's a critical first step. If you'd like to take these ideas deeper, join me for an 8-week course on honorable manhood.